Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Manyan Chan, a Year 2 Bachelor of Business Administration and Bachelor of Law student.
And I am Sabrina Sun, a Year 2 Bachelor of Laws student. On behalf of the Faculty of Law, the University of Hong Kong, we would like to extend our warmest welcome to all of you for attending the Faculty of Law Undergraduate Admissions Talk 2025. Throughout this talk, you will gain deeper insights into the life at HKU Law, as well as the different programs we provide you here.
It is our greatest honor to have Professor Marco Wan, the Director of Admissions of the Faculty of Law, to speak to us here today. With his profound expertise in law and humanities, constitutional law, and legal theory, Professor Wan has been awarded the Penny Feather Prize from the Association of Law, the HQ Research Output Prize, and the HQ Outstanding Teaching Award. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Marco Wan. Professor Wan.
So I wanted to begin by welcoming all of you to campus. Thank you very much for coming. We're excited to meet you. And there is a booth, as you probably saw, on the first floor. So if you have any questions about our programs, about admissions, after the session, please do come and ask, or just come and say hello. It'd be fantastic to meet all of you. And I wanted to give you a roadmap of the session for today. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about the HKU Law Faculty, about our curriculum, about our mode of teaching, and I'll talk about what I think sets us apart from other law schools. I'll then discuss in more detail the programs that we offer here at HKU Law. So we offer a plethora of programs, and they can sometimes be a little bit difficult to navigate. So I'll talk about them in a bit more depth, and I'll also talk about the admissions requirements. And I'll try to give a sense of the kinds of things that we're looking for in our applicants. And then we will end with a student sharing. So we're joined by 4 students who are currently enrolled here at HKU. So that you can get a sense of the students' experience here as well. So you'd hear from the students and get their perspective as well. So that's kind of a roadmap. So HKU Law, what's HKU Law like? I suppose it's customary in these sessions to begin with our global ranking, with our distinguished faculty, but I don't actually think that's a very productive way of beginning. Information about our faculty. My colleagues are great. They're really fantastic scholars, but you can get their information on our website. Our rankings in the league tables, and I know what the rankings are. You know what the rankings are. We get them from the same source. So rather than kind of dwelling on those things, I thought I would begin with an anecdote. And this is an anecdote that one of our former deans used to use that I like very much because I think it really captures the way we think about teaching and learning at the law school. So the anecdote goes something like this. He said, what is it like to be a law student? When you're a law student, obviously you study hard, you go to courses, you go to your classes, and then you take exams, right? That's a big part of being a law student. And he says, what happens after your exams? After your exams, you basically, very often, immediately forget half of what you've learned, right? Because that's just the nature of exams, right? You learn, and you cram, and you go into the exam hall, and the second you come out, you would have forgotten half of what you'd crammed. And he says, by the time you graduate, so you might take an exam in year 2 or year 3, by the time you graduate a year or 2 later, you would have forgotten half of what you'd retained, right? So you come out of the exam hall, you forget half of what you learned, so you're left with half. By the time you graduate, you would have forgotten half of what you'd retained, so you're left with a quarter. And he says, by the time you qualify as a lawyer and you come out to practice, you would have found that the quarter that you retained had become irrelevant because the law would have changed. Right? So laws are constantly changing, laws are constantly being updated, new legislation, new cases from the courts. And I like this anecdote a lot because, again, I think it captures the ethos of teaching and learning here in the sense that we're not just teaching you a set of rules or a bunch of cases called law, although that's a big part of it as well. But what we're trying to cultivate here is something much more enduring, something much more enduring. And what we're trying to do here, excuse me, is really to develop a way of thinking, develop a way of thinking. Lawyers, especially common law lawyers, think in a certain way. We reason in a certain way. We approach the world and we solve problems in a certain way. And it's a very powerful way of engaging with the world. And that's really at the core of what we are trying to teach here at the law school, a common law way of thinking and a common law way of reasoning. And this is something that is going to stand you in good stead, obviously, if you become a lawyer, if you become a judge or a jurist, but if you go into other professions as well, as many of our students do. So it's a very powerful and also very versatile way of thinking, and that's what we try to cultivate here. And I'll talk more about the kinds of things that our students end up doing after the course. We are the oldest and the largest law school here in Hong Kong. And that one of the things that means is that we have the largest alumni network here in Hong Kong. So you can find our alumni really across the different echelons of the legal profession. Just to give you some numbers, 62% of members of the Law Society are HKU alums, 5,000 people working in law firms, no fewer than 34 senior counsel at the Hong Kong Bar are our alumni. And of course, you have people within the judiciary as well. And 10 out of the 13 judges in the Court of Final Appeal are HKU law graduates. And one thing I've been teaching here for almost 20 years. And one thing I find really distinctive about our alumni community is that they care deeply about the law faculty. And they often come back and they share their experience with our students. So they come back and they share with our students what it was like when their careers first began. We had senior counsels or law firm partners coming and sharing their experience of being a young lawyer. You have people coming back with war stories. You have people coming to give advice about doing interviews at law firms or at barristers' chambers. You have people coming in to talk about what it's like to pursue a career outside of the law after they finish the law degree. And there is this real culture of connecting and giving and exchanging and sharing across different generations of HKU students. And I think this is something that's really, really unique. And this is something that our students really benefit from, that kind of frank exchange with people who've gone through the same experience and who are now much more established in the legal profession. So mentorship is something that we're very proud of, that we take very seriously. And this is something that we foster here at the law school. Some further dimensions of the curriculum here: experiential learning, mooting, and global learning through exchange. So what do these things mean? Experiential learning, as the name suggests, is learning through lived experience. Learning through lived experience. So as a law student, obviously you are learning from law textbooks, you're reading cases, and that all happens in the classroom. But one thing we really emphasize is bringing that kind of knowledge to the real world, to make an impact on the community and to get a sense of what it's like to apply the law in action from a very early stage in your academic career. Mooting is basically a mock trial. So a moot is a kind of simulated legal proceeding. And all our students take part in mooting, and during the process of mooting, they kind of dress up as lawyers, and they're given documents the way lawyers would be in a real legal setting. And they're making arguments and giving opinions in front of an adjudicator or a judge in a kind of live environment. So that's mooting, and that, again, that's a big part of the curriculum here. And then global learning through student exchange. So this is where students go abroad to study. It's possible to spend a semester or a year somewhere else if you study law at HKU. And we also welcome a lot of international students onto campus. So what we offer really is a kind of global education. So just a little bit more detail about each of those things. So experiential learning. So that takes a variety of forms. So we have internship programs, for instance, for students who are interested in being placed at the law firm or in the Department of Justice. We also offer our own legal clinic. So as you might know, this is a clinic that's open to the public. And anybody can call in and say, I have a legal problem, I have a legal issue that I don't quite know what to do about. And the clinic is staffed by qualified lawyers. And these lawyers speak with the people calling in, and if they decide to take the case, then they work with our students to try to come up with legal solutions to these people who are coming to the clinic. So this is really where the students take what they learn in the class and apply what they learn to a real environment. So these are the kinds of things that they do within the legal clinic. So conduct initial interviews with lay clients. So people would come in and the students would ask questions. And asking questions in this setting is a bit of an art. Right? You are asking them about their experience with the aim of helping them with their legal problem. So it's about asking very specific questions about what's happening with them. Drafting case summaries, performing legal research, attending advice sessions with qualified solicitors and barristers. So again, working with qualified lawyers very closely in order to help the people who come to us. And then recording and summarizing legal advice for review and archive. So the range of topics that they come across obviously depends on the people coming in, but it's very wide. So contract, business disputes, divorce and custody, employment and consumer rights, criminal matters, property and inheritance claim, intellectual property, and defamation. And this is a really unique aspect of the curriculum, and we're one of the first law schools to pioneer experiential learning and the legal clinic here in Hong Kong. Mooting, again, this is a kind of mock trial, simulated legal proceeding. The students are trained to think on their feet, and to respond to questions that an adjudicator or a judge may have. And our students do extremely well at both here in Hong Kong and for those who choose to take part in international mooting competitions, also in international mooting competitions. And this is a training that's really, really valuable. Again, valuable if you're thinking about becoming a lawyer, an advocate, but also more generally. When you're at a moot, you're prepared, but you never quite know what questions you're going to get. Right? And so it's really a training about thinking on your feet and responding articulately and eloquently to basically anything that gets thrown at you. And then finally, exchange. We have over 200 global partner universities, and many of our students go abroad. Just as a side note, one question I often get as the director of admissions is from students and parents who are interested in law, but they're not quite sure whether they should do that here in Hong Kong or whether they should go abroad. And I mean, I'm happy to talk more about that if people have questions later on out at the booth. But one thing I often say to people with such questions is, it's not an either or. It's not an either or. Obviously, if you want the experience of living abroad for 3 years or 4 years, that makes sense, then you should go abroad. If you stay in Hong Kong, it's still possible to build an experience abroad into your education, right? So you can spend up to a year in the UK and London, as many of our students do. That's a quarter of your curriculum, right? That's quite a lot. And that's not even counting summers abroad or doing a master's abroad after HKU, right? So my suggestion when people ask me about studying law in Hong Kong versus studying abroad is don't think of it as a binary. It's not an either or. You can have the best of both possible worlds. So these are some of our students who have gone abroad. Elizabeth, who I actually taught in legal theory last year, went to UPenn in America. I know that she enjoyed it very much. And then Jolie spent some time in Oxford, and you will hear from her later on in the session. So an integrated curriculum, mooting, global education, experiential learning, a firm foundation in legal thinking, and all of these things serve as a foundation for really a myriad of professions. So after a law degree here, you can, of course, go and become a lawyer, a solicitor, or a barrister. You can go into the judiciary, be a judge or a magistrate. You can work in-house. So this is where you work as a lawyer, not at the law firm, but within a major corporation. So being a lawyer for Coca-Cola, let's say, right, or for Tesla. You can work in the public sector, become a prosecutor, government counsel. But really, and this is one thing I want to emphasize, really beyond the legal profession, there are so many things you can do with a law degree. And I've seen students go and become civil servants. We have alumni who go into politics. We have alumni who go into journalism. We have alumni who go into the arts. So Tang Shu-wing, whose name you might recognize as one of the pioneers of physical theater in Hong Kong, and he was at the APA for quite a while. He's one of the graduates of the law faculty. And the world of theater and the world of law might seem very far away, but they're not. They're not. You can also go into academia, of course, become a mediator. Again, there's no end to the number of things you can do. Okay, so that's a very general introduction to the curriculum. I'm now going to say more about the specific programs that we offer and the kinds of things that we're looking for in our applicants. So we've got basically three clusters of programs, so three main streams that we offer here at the faculty. So the first cluster is our Bachelor of Laws. This is the LLB. So this is the single law degree. You come for 4 years and you do law for 4 years. Right? So that's the flagship program. If people talk about doing law at HKU, that's probably the degree that they think of. And that's for 4 years. The second strand or cluster is the integrated double degrees. So this is where you study law, you study another subject at the same time. And this is a 5-year program. At the end of the 5 years, you come out with a law degree, an LLB, and a degree in the other subject that you do. And these are the programs, double degree programs that we offer. So business and law, BBA law, government and law, literary studies and law, or arts and law, and then the latest edition, science and law. And I'll say more about each of these in a little bit. And then the third strand or cluster of programs is the dual degree program. So this is where students study law at HKU and study law at a partner institution in another city. It's also a 5-year, well, it's a 4-year program if you go to London. So we have a partnership with University College London. and it's 5 years if you go to Peking U. So we have a partnership with Peking U in Beijing. So these programs in a bit more detail. The LLB, again, this is our flagship degree. It's ideal for careers in legal practice, the judiciary, corporate counsel, public service, academia, and this provides a solid foundation in legal knowledge, critical thinking, analytical skills, and bilingual proficiency. And I just want to say a little bit about that final point, bilingual proficiency. So one unique feature of the LB here at HKU that it places emphasis on common law, obviously, but also in Chinese law. So introduction in Chinese law is compulsory for all of our students. And we have a myriad of courses on basically all dimensions of Chinese law, again, taught by some of the leading scholars and the most promising scholars in the field. So Chinese intellectual property law, Chinese environmental law, whatever area you're interested in, you will probably find a course here. And again, this is a very unique dimension to the program. There aren't many places around the world where you can have exposure to both common law and Chinese law. Arts and Law, this is a program near and dear to my heart because it's the program that I helped set up when I first arrived. And this is a program where you do a law degree and also a degree in literary studies. A degree in literary studies. Literature very broadly defined to include film and visual material. And the starting premise of the degree in law and arts is really that at the end of the day, lawyers and literary critics are doing very similar things. They're doing very similar things in that they're always engaging in the interpretation of texts. So lawyers, what do lawyers do? Lawyers interpret constitutions, lawyers interpret contracts, lawyers interpret statutes. What do literary critics do? Literary critics interpret poetry, novels, film, drama. And people in both disciplines have developed very sophisticated theories about what it means to be engaging in this process of interpretation. So what this program explores is whether people in these two disciplines have something to teach each other. Can lawyers learn something about what it means to read, say, a legal case from the literary critics? And can the literary critics learn something about what it means to interpret from the way lawyers do it? So it's a very fun program. It engages in interdisciplinary thinking, and it also fosters language skills, deep engagement with language and interpretation. It's ideal for students interested in legal theory, human rights, ethics, cultural analysis, but also beyond. And it prepares graduates for careers certainly in law. So if you come out with a degree and you want to become a lawyer, you can, but also publishing, academia, and the arts. Business and law, this is, as you can imagine, one of our most popular double degrees. So students come out with a degree in business and a degree in law, and it prepares students for careers in banking, finance, business, and law. And within the business proportion of the curriculum, there is quite a lot of flexibility. So you can either major in business or do a professional core in accounting. So this really gives students dual skill sets, skills in legal reasoning and skills in business strategy. Science and law. So this is where students study law, but also at the same time get a very in-depth look in technology and topics like AI. This is a very exciting degree in my mind because, as you probably know, the legal landscape of AI is still being formed, right? The legal rules for regulating AI are still being written. How do we use law to rein in AI? How do we use law to foster innovation in AI and beyond? So students who are doing this degree are really studying law at the cutting edge, and they're working with our colleagues over in the Faculty of Science. And so this is our latest edition. So if you're interested in science and law and the intersection between them, this is the degree for you. Government and law. So this is a program where students think hard about what it means to have a society that is well governed. What it means to have a society that's well governed. What does governance look like? And what, if anything, what role, if any, should law play in this process of governance? So this fosters skills in legal analysis, but also in public policy, legislative drafting, and international, and it fosters interest in international relations. And then the third cluster of programs are dual degrees. So again, 2 dual degrees, and we're working with 2 different partners. One is University College London in the UK. So this is a 4-year program. You get 2 degrees coming out of it, a law degree from HKU and a law degree from UCL. And then the other double degree program, HKU, Peking U, 5 years. You get 2 law degrees at the end of it, 1 from HKU, 1 from Peking U. And so the students spend half their time here in Hong Kong and half their time in the other city. And these are, again, really unique programs. Whether these are the right programs for you depends on what you're trying to get out of the program. So the HKU UCL program gives you 2 law degrees in 2 common law jurisdictions, England and Hong Kong. And one distinctive thing about the common law is that it manifests itself differently in different places. So the common law in Hong Kong, the common law in Singapore, the common law in India, the common law in England, they're the same set of rules and the same way of thinking, but they manifest themselves differently. So this is a program that really allows you to look at the similarities and the differences, and of course to have the experience of living in and being immersed in the culture of 2 very exciting and also very different cities. The HKU Peking U program gives a more comparative dimension in the sense that you come out with a law degree from a common law jurisdiction and a common law degree from a civil law jurisdiction. And these are 2 systems which are very, very different. And again, this is a very unique program where you have the opportunity to not just be exposed to both traditions, but to really gain an in-depth knowledge of the both of them. And again, you have the opportunity of living in 2 very exciting, but also very different cities, Beijing and Hong Kong. Okay, so these are the admissions requirements. I will post these up online, so no need to copy them down. I'll first talk about the JUPAS requirements. So the requirements if you're doing the local DSE exam, and then the non-JUPAS requirements. So if you're doing the IB, let's say, or the British A-levels. So if you're JUPAS candidates, these are the minimum scores that we're looking at. So for so across the different degrees, we're looking at a 5 in English, a 4 in Chinese, and then math, it varies depending on the program. And then we're also asking for 3 in the elective subjects, a minimum of 3. Now, the scoring formula is slightly different for each program. And again, we'll post this up online. So for most of our degrees, we're looking at your total score based on English and your best 5 subjects. But with some of the other programs, more weighting is given to 1 or 2 subjects. So for business and law, a greater weighting is given to math, for instance. So you times your math score by 1.5 because if you're going to be in business, you need to be good at math. So these are the minimum requirements. But what I would emphasize here is that these are really the minimum requirements. Right? So that's really the threshold. The kind of actual scores that we're looking at is on this slide. And this is a rough estimate based on the data we have from this past admission cycle. so from 2025. So the point here is not to say, oh, if you get this score, then you will get in when you apply next year or this year. This is just to give you a rough sense of what we're looking at based on past data. So we're looking at, for the LLB, a median of 35. The Arts and Law program, BALB, a median of 38. Business and Law, 46, based on their scoring formula, where some subjects are multiplied. Science and Law, 54, and Government and Law, 37. Right, so that's a median, and again, I hope that's useful in giving you a basic sense of what we're looking for. We're trying to be as transparent as possible. Is there anything else I want to say about this? No. Okay. This year, for the first time, we're participating in the School Nominations Direct Admission Scheme, or CINDAS. So as you probably know, this is where each local secondary school can nominate up to 2 students who they think have exceptional talents and interests. We're very excited about this, in part because we recognize that exams are not the be-all and end-all. Right? They're a proxy for talent, they're a proxy for aptitude, and most of the time we have to work by the exam scores because we can't speak to every single applicant individually. But now that the scheme is available, we're taking part in the hope that we will find students who may have a bit of an unconventional profile, but who are recommended to us from their schools as being people who would do well at a law school. So we're doing that for the first time. And if you're nominated, then you'll be invited to come in for an interview. So if you're JUPAS candidates, these are the dates that you should be keeping in mind. So the 3rd of December, the deadline for submission of the JUPAS application. 2nd of January, the deadline for submitting other experiences and activities. 27th of May, deadline for updating your program choices, and then your results, exam results come out, and the main round offer is announced on the 5th of August, and that's the same across all universities in Hong Kong. Now, if you are a non-JUPAS candidate, if you're doing an exam other than the DSC, like the IB or the GCE, again, based on past experience, these are the kinds of scores that we're looking at. And this is the expected lower boundary from this past year. Right? So this is kind of like the threshold that we're looking at. So for the LB, it's 40 out of 45 on the IB, and 3A star for the GCE A level. For the Arts and Law program, it's 41 out of 45 for the IB and 3A star for the A levels. And if you're doing AP or the SAT through the American system, the scores are listed there. So 1,500 on the SAT, and then 5 on your APs. If you're only doing the AP, then 5 on 5 of the APs. Otherwise, it's 5 on 3 of your APs. For the dual degree programs, 42 is kind of what we're looking at, with no score lower than 6 in any individual subject. And then the GCA level is 3A star. What I would say is that hasn't changed very much over the past few years. For non-JUPAS or international candidates, that's the timeline that we're looking at. So in late September, you start your application, you submit in late November. And then one thing I want to highlight is that applications are evaluated on a rolling basis. Right? So once we get the applications, we start screening them. So my suggestion to you is if you're interested in applying, send in your application as early as possible, because a rolling admissions means that as the places get filled, there'll be fewer and fewer places. Right? So the earlier you can get your application in, the better. First round results announced in the beginning of December, and then applications are accepted throughout the year until the end of August. Okay, Every year we get questions about interview arrangements. So again, we want to be as transparent as we can about this. So what does it mean if you get invited for an interview? What does it mean if you don't get invited for an interview? So this year, the way we're doing it is, if you're applying and your score is kind of at the lower boundary, then we would invite you to come in for an interview. We invite you to come in for an interview. And so, the interview you can think of as a supportive process. It's a supportive process. It's not meant to intimidate or to screen anybody out. The interview is really a chance for us to get to know you, and for you to show us why you would be a good candidate to be here at the law school. So if you do come for an interview, don't be intimidated. Don't feel like you're being tested. Think of it as a supportive process, a chance for you to tell us a bit more about yourself. The interviews are usually usually conducted in a group setting. So it's a small group interview, and you'll be given a legal problem. You'll be given a legal problem, and at the end of the problem, you'll be asked, do you think this person is guilty? Do you think this person should be convicted? Right? And we're interested in how you interact with other people and how you think through a legal problem. We also often get questions about how best to prepare for an interview if you're asked to come in for an interview. And my suggestion based on the interviews from previous years is keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. And what I mean by that is, very often we see students come in and they're given a problem. Do you think this person's guilty? If you're the judge, rule. And then they decide, right? Yes, this person's guilty, or I will find that there is a breach of contract here. And then, in the course of the conversation, we ask them questions. Oh, but what about this? Or, what if the situation was like that? And we find that the most thoughtful people, the most thoughtful candidates, are the people who think through those questions. And that might mean that after thinking through those questions, you're still convinced that you're right? So you stick to your original answer. Yes, this person's guilty. No, this person should not be convicted. Or you might change your mind. You might change your mind and say, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. Right? And sometimes, we see students who are so nervous, and they double down. Then they double down. They say, oh, yes, this person's guilty. And we say, oh, what about this? And say, well, yeah, they're still guilty, and I'm not changing my answer. And that's not necessary. That's not necessary. And what I'm suggesting here is not that if you change your mind, then you'll definitely get in, and that's the best formula. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, don't feel like you have to stick with the position. Right? Just take the questions as they come, think through them. If after a round of questions you still decide you're right, tell us why. If after a round of questions you feel like you've changed your mind, right, you've altered your original position, you can say that. That's fine. Lawyers do that all the time. Right. So again, don't feel like you're kind of boxed in, don't feel intimidated. Just come in and have a conversation with us. Right? That's the best way, I think, of thinking about the interviews. And then if you're interested in finding out more, and I'm coming to the end of my presentation, if you're interested in finding out more, during the summer, we have a host of activities which are aimed at giving you a sense of what it's like to study law here at HKU. So we have the Legal Academy student chapters, which is aimed at all eligible secondary school students. We have the taster, which is aimed at people from grade 8 to 10. We have the Legal Academy for the talented, aimed at students who are a little bit closer to applying to university, so grades 10 to 11. And then we have the Summer Institute, which is run not by the faculty, but by the university. So if you join one of these sessions, you'll be engaging in a variety of activities. It could be trying out a live moot. It could be sitting in on a law lecture to get a sense of what law lectures are like. It could be a campus tour. It could be a combination of those things. So if you're interested, again, there's information at the booth. Do come and talk to us. I would encourage you to come. They're a lot of fun. Before I move to the student sharing, so just one more thing about what happens after the session. So after student sharing, here are the other talks that are going on today. So at 12:30 is going to be a live moot by our award-winning mooters. So if you're interested in seeing what a moot is like, please do come along. My colleague Trevor is going to be doing admissions talk for the government and laws program at 12:30 and then at 2:30? 12:30, okay. And then there's also a separate talk for the business and law program. And then later this afternoon, we're offering 2 mini lectures. So again, the mini lectures are to give you a sense of what it's like to be a law student and sit in on a lecture at a law school. So my colleague Edward is giving a lecture on irrationality in administrative law. And my colleague Ryan is giving a lecture on generative text in the law. So this is a course on, or a lecture on AI in law. And of course, we have the live chats and the booth outside. Okay, so that's pretty much it from me. And I'm now going to introduce our students who have very kindly agreed to join us today. So Emma Chow, who is doing the LLB. She achieved a perfect score at her IB, and she's had the experience of going on exchange at the National University of Singapore. Jolie Yong, who is doing the business and law program, and we've encountered her briefly before. She did her exchange at Oxford, and she's also an active member of the Advocacy and Mooting Society. Walter Hui is the recipient of an Evergreen Scholarship for Student Enrichment, and he's on the Arts and Law program. So he'll be telling us a bit about that. And then last but certainly not least, Daniel Wong, who also got the perfect score in the IB, and he is on the HKU UCL dual degree program. So guys, please come on up. We'll kind of kick off with some questions and we'll see how we go. So really, again, this is to give you a sense of what it's like to be a law student here from the mouths of the students, right? So you're not just hearing from the teachers all the time. So I guess my first question to all of you is that you're obviously doing law now. Not too long ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you were sitting here, right, thinking about maybe doing law. So my question to you is, if you had a chance to talk to the you from yesteryear, the younger you, when you were in the seat thinking about doing law, what would you say? Maybe we'll start with Walter.
Thank you, Professor Wan, for the question. Now, the thing I would tell my former self is to always be more critical in thinking. And I think this is one of the skill sets that I've acquired only in law school, which has hugely benefited my studies. I mean, I recall my time in secondary school where I was basically spoon-fed information, being told what to revise, what is examinable, what is not, how to prepare for the public examination and all that. But what I wasn't really taught is to think independently and to really be responsible for my own views and take on certain matters. And I think this critical, analytical way of thinking is really one thing that I wish my younger self would have had at that time.
I think I would tell myself not to be so intimidated by law school, actually, because I remember like being a secondary school student and thinking law is such a difficult subject. I mean, it still is a very tough subject, but sometimes we improve and we learn as we continue our studies. So not all of us came into law school being, very good at debating or very good at reading readings. And that's not really necessary to get into law school because we really just need to be open to learning and improving and we learn as we go. And it's not really that difficult. I mean, like we do have
a lot of readings, but as we study more and more, we realize that there are usually more important parts of the readings than the others. So we know how to focus on the more important parts, and you would save time in the process. So even though you may hear like, oh, law students have to read like 2 books every week, that's not really true. If you read every single optional reading, that might be true. But as we learn, we know how to, make sure we spend our time on more valuable things.
Yeah, I think adding on to what Jolie just said, I think going into law, I had this misconception that law is just memorizing a bunch of rules and then somehow regurgitating them in the exam. But I want to tell my former self that the law is like super alive and super dynamic. So in the past, I might think, oh, I need to take history, I need to take econ, because these are the subjects that are most akin to law. But now I can say law just relates to so many things and so many subjects. For instance, if you like science, you can start thinking early on in high school about how this relates to, for instance, IP law, like how you can patent that kind of technology and innovation. Or for instance, if you're into art, how you can help other creators protect their own creations. If you're into econ, it's not necessarily, oh, you're good at forming an argument, so you'll be good at law. But there's also the more STEM-y side of econ, which really ties into competition law. So I think I'll tell myself to keep an open mind, read more current events, and see how everything in life just relates somehow to law, because that would be manifested when you start your law degree and when you start your legal profession.
Yeah, and just to add to what they've all said, I think it's also important to read about current affairs and to think about your own arguments, the different perspectives of looking at different things. When you see news reports, think about the assumptions they make or what sort of evidence they're relying on. I think that's really important, an important skill to apply to in real life. And when you come out to law school, and then you can apply all your sort of critical thinking about the world and then understand it better. I think that's really important.
And could you, I mean, I'm guessing, I'm hoping that people in the audience are interested in kind of the different people are interested in the different programs that we offer. Could I ask you to say a little bit about your experience of the program that you're doing? So, with HKU UCL, for instance, you spent 2 years in London, 2 years in Hong Kong. What was that like? Was that fun? Was that hectic? Did it take a lot of adjustment? Or with, arts and law, do you find that movement between literary studies and law productive? Or did it take some adjustment? So could you tell us a little bit about your experience in each of your programs?
Maybe I can begin. Talking about so I'm a BA and LLB student, so arts and law. Professor Wan talked about the similarities between the role of lawyers and literary critics. But from my personal experience, I think lawyers themselves are inherently, they need to be good storytellers. And I think this is really a part of my studies that hugely benefited me when I'm doing internships or when I'm hoping to work as a lawyer. Now, I think it goes back to the very fact that the study of law and the study of literature is about the analyzing of text, to ask the question not only what is being written, but to also ask why is this written this way. So I think to be able to appreciate the text in an in-depth manner and to read between the lines is sort of a thing that, or a feature that highlights the BA and LLB curriculum.
So I do BBA law, and I think business and law really complement each other well. For example, I was working at a corporate law firm over the summer, and for corporate, there's a lot of business elements to it. And for example, I do accounting as my major, so there are a lot of financial statements that you would have to read, and with that accounting background, it makes my legal job a lot easier.
And also, well, to be frank, when I was a secondary school student, I wasn't sure if law was really correct, like the right thing for me. So by choosing business and law, I'm trying to maximize my chances of actually getting something I want. And I think that was really a right choice because now I can either choose to be a lawyer or I can also be an accountant or I could work in business. And it really gives me a lot of flexibility and it gives me more an edge compared to, let's say, students who only study business because I also have that legal knowledge that would help in many aspects. So I think BBA law is a very right choice for those who aren't too sure about what they want to do yet, but they have some sort of direction. They know that they might want to do something related to business or something in that field.
Yeah, so just a refresher, I do the HK-UCL program. So I was really attracted to the prospect of studying in both jurisdictions. I think both universities, having studied in both of them, both really have leading academics from the legal field, and I feel that that's a great attraction. It's also good to experience life in both jurisdictions because you interact with people from different cultures. I think that's really important. And also, um, there's this thing called the conversions. If you do the HK-UCL degree, dual degree, you don't have to do conversions. We also have a very limited cohort size, so it's around, my cohort has around 7 people, but usually in usual circumstances, 10 people per year. And we're a very tight-knit community where we go on trips together, we celebrate each other's birthdays. I think that's really something which I'm glad that happened, and I would strongly recommend the dual degree to everyone here.
Emily, you want to add? No.
Yeah, so I take the single degree, so LLB. And I think one perk is that it's 4 years instead of 5. Like if you take B law, G law, or A law, that would be 5 years. Another perk is that because we're only doing law subjects, like without a second major, so we get to do the core subjects earlier than other double degree students. So for instance, in year 2, I already know like crim law and tort law and things like that. But if you do the double degree programs, you might only learn them later. So I think like learning more law heavy content has helped me with my internships, like just knowing the content of the law.
Okay. I guess one thing that I'm interested in is, obviously doing a law degree, like with any degree, is a journey, right? You get highs and lows, you get ups and downs. So could each of you kind of tell us a moment where either you thought, oh, I'm so glad I'm doing this, like an experience, or a moment where you go, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. And if you encountered that kind of moment, how did you deal with that? It could be workload, it could be not quite knowing how to deal with the subject. Did you have any kinds of highs or lows that you could share with us?
For me, I think it's a constant cycle. Yeah, from semester to semester, there will always be times when you start questioning yourself. You start to ask the question of whether you belong to the faculty, whether you are a good enough law student. But I think the most important thing that has kept me afloat through all these semesters are the friends around me. I have good friends whom I can talk to, whom I can share my struggles with, and they can give me some honest feedback. And very often, and some of my friends were indeed actually seniors, so they have been in the exact spot where I was at that time. So I think their advice and their honest feedback really helped me to focus on what's really important and to really forget about all the other unnecessary worries that ineluctably will occur.
I think the high is whenever I encounter a very silly case. So throughout law school, we really see like very absurd case facts, and they're always like foul language, random family relationships. They're all very funny. So I've got many screenshots of just random judgments and sending them to my friends, be like, why are they saying that? And I think I find a lot of joy in that. And I think it just makes my law school really interesting because it's not really just textbooks and like very dull, boring, complicated text. It's always very interesting little life stories that you can learn about. So I think that's a high for me. And I think the low is when you start to think you've got the hang of a subject and then suddenly one assignment can completely defeat you. Like you would not be able to answer it and you probably get a poor grade from that assignment when you think that you already know how to answer the questions well. And then that's when I realized that I really have to keep improving, like law is a never ending learning process, and you just have to keep learning and don't think that you've already known everything about that area of law, because there can never be such a case.
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. So I guess the low would just be how hard law is. Like, I think we all know that this is not news, but it is hard to just get through the cases and to rationalize them in your head, and it does get tiring sometimes. I think a high is that every time I walk into a courtroom, which you would get many opportunities to do so if you join HKU Law, I feel like the sanctity of it. I feel like this is a venue where the rule of law plays out, at least in our society. And to me, that is a really precious feeling. And I just get like really emotional every time thinking that, well, we're studying this course. And if we want to join this profession, we're helping to further the rule of law in Hong Kong. So yeah, that is like a really continuous high for me.
Yeah, just to add to what they've said. So I also agree that it's a cycle. There's highs, there's lows, but that's the same for a lot of different programs in HKU, not just for law. I think it's really about how you deal with it, right? Um, I'll start off with the highs, maybe that's better. So uh, I do a lot of pro bono. So as a part of our program, the HKUCL program, we are obligated to do pro bono work. So we have to do that in London and in Hong Kong as well. And when you're doing that, in case any of you don't know, pro bono is basically help volunteering and helping out in the community in terms of legal work. And you really get to interact with these clients, and it's very, you get to see the world and you see what these people are going through, and you do feel good in a sense that you're helping out the community also, learning the different challenges that people are facing. I think that's because I've done both London and Hong Kong pro bono work, so I think that's a really good experience, and it's unique to the HKUCL program as well because you get to do it in both jurisdictions. In terms of the lows, I don't want to repeat what Walter and Jolie and Emma have said. Of course, Lord, there are tough times because there's a lot of reading, but at the same time, I think a lot of people at the faculty, our cohorts, really nice people, get along really well. Everyone's going through it as well. So I think going through the lows together and the highs together is something which makes it easier for everyone, and it sort of connects everyone as well.
So that sense of community.
Yeah, a sense of community. Yeah.
Maybe I'll ask two more questions, and then we can kind of wrap up the formal part of today. So one question is, I talked about different dimensions of the curriculum, mooting, exchange, and experiential learning. So could you maybe talk about your experience with one or more of those things? If you went on exchange, or you're involved in advocacy, what was your experience? What was it like from your perspective?
Right. I actually participated in a couple of moots in my junior years, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. I think moots, in essence, is a mock case where you try to present legal arguments and you try to convince the judge to side with your case. Now, I think it's a really good practical experience to not just read through textbooks and prepare for exams, write out answers, but to really put what we have learned into practice. And when doing advocacy, there is always this question of not only to getting the legal points right, but also to frame it in a way that is beneficial to your case or to your client. And I think this sort of thinking really stimulates sort of my own understanding of the law, and it really helps cultivate a good relationship between me and my moot partner. And I think that was, yeah, a terrific experience.
So like Walter, I also participated in a few moots, and I think it really just helps you practice how to think on the spot. It's quite stressful at times, but it's also very exciting to see that the side you're advocating for eventually wins. And we'll actually have a mood demonstration later, so please look forward to that. I also went on exchange to the UK, to Oxford, and it was a really nice experience for me, and it's so rare that I get to spend a whole year there and experience their actual tutorial system. It was really interesting because it's a very different way of teaching compared to HKU. So they have a very small size teaching, and it just really makes me realize that different ways of teaching allows me to understand the law in a different way. So, for example, Oxford might spend a little bit more time on theoretical aspects of the law, whereas at HKU we do a lot more practices on how we actually apply the law. So different modes of learning really helps me, well, complement each other perfectly, and really helps me understand the law much better. And it was just a really fun year as well. So it was a really great experience.
Yeah, so I went to exchange at the National University of Singapore. So I think it's a bit of a different experience from what Jolie felt, because while the teaching mode there is quite similar to the one in Hong Kong, it's actually the regional market that kind of made the difference for me. So at NUS, I took a course called ASEAN Law. So we learned about the soft law system between the different ASEAN member states. And that has really helped me understand how different nations interact with each other. And I could look at it from a much wider perspective. And I feel like taking exchange somewhere else has helped me understand better the role of Hong Kong as a hub and like a connector between different regions. And I think that has given me definitely like a much broader global perspective and understanding and how the commercial world works.
Yeah, my experience was similar to Emma's, I think, because I went to UCL. So over there, we learned some subjects that are unique to the UK common law system, or the subjects over there are sort of not offered in HKU. For example, UK constitutional law, EU law, jurisprudence, and these are also taught by academics, all in their leading academics, all in their respective fields. So I think, and then after coming back to HKU, then you can also compare what you've learned at HKU. So, for example, our own version, HKU, in like Hong Kong constitutional law or introduction to Chinese legal system, you get a very wide range of different knowledge in regard to these different legal subjects. And then I think that's very eye-opening, and it's very good to have this sort of knowledge when you're younger. Yeah.
And then the final question is, do you have any final words or words of wisdom for people in the audience today? You don't have to have any, but do you have?
Well, I've got this one quote that's always stuck with me in law school. I have it for you. The quote is this: in law school, you either be the smart friend or you find a smart friend. That's a really helpful and true quote. But I guess the smart friend is not, a stereotype. It's not something that's that can be easily defined, in the sense that we all have different strengths and weaknesses. We can be the smart friend in a particular area of law and be the one who requires the smart friend in another area of law. But the whole important bit about this quote is the idea that we are always here to help each other out, that we are not always not alone in this fight or in this pursuit of learning of the law. So I hope this. This quote contains some wisdom that helps me survive law school, which I wish to pass it on to you all. Yeah.
I just want to add on to that, which is we do have a lot of mutual support among the law faculty. For example, seniors would often pass on their saucy, which essentially means like notes and past papers to their juniors. And it's really important because once you've entered law school, you feel really welcomed because you have those kind of supports. So it makes everything easier. And we also have time to do a lot of different things. For example, we can be in societies or live in dormitories or join all sorts of, sports teams or music teams and whatsoever. So the law faculty, like law faculty members are often very active in those kind of groups and societies as well. So it is quite fun to be at HKU Law.
Yeah, to add on to that, there's a really strong local alumni network in Hong Kong U. So whether it's for mentorship, where in the first year you're paired with someone in the legal profession who is a Hong Kong U law alumni, and you can like get to build like lifelong relationships with them, or whether it's just like through local scholarships from local donors, you can see how strong the commitment is from Hong Kong U to its local community. One more thing is I've always decided that I want to work in Hong Kong. And I felt like just being here is the perfect choice for me because there are such strong local ties, whether it's within your own cohort, with your other students who would go on to become your colleagues or your opponents, or with your tutors who are often practicing barristers or solicitors. And they could just take you under your wing and give you all sorts of guidance you need throughout your career. I think that is a really, really important part of Hong Kong U law life for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree what they've said about community. I think that's also true for me. Even if it's not the HKUCL Dual Degree program, I see a lot of different friend groups in HKU Law. I think people really bond together over the few years that they're here. And I think that's something which is very valuable in university. But just to add to that, just to add a different point, I also think studying law also, especially at HKU, also really makes you understand how the world works, how different rules control different aspects of society. I think that in itself is very valuable of understanding the world you live in and how things operate, And I think after graduating from HKU and UCL, I think I really understand the world a lot better on how it works and something very valuable. And I think I would choose the same even if I could go back in time.
So I wanted to say thank you to the students for thinking on your feet and for answering so honestly and graciously. And I also want to say thank you to all of you for coming today. Again, we'll stick around for a bit, so if you have questions, please do come and ask. So thank you very much.